No, I don't have the doorbell thing turned on. Um, yeah, usually I don't know. Yeah, so lately I'm meeting folks who are busy and they'll come like, 4 or 5 minutes in and but I usually was just like turn on my mic and camera and I imagine they'll just be like, "Hey, I'm here. Sorry I was late." So I thought that was the etiquette, but no need for the doorbell. No, not at all. Yeah. No, red. I think I think red was the earliest one. Yeah, I'm confident that was it. It was the first one I ever played. First time I played Pokemon was Pokemon Red on Game Boy Color. So it wasn't like the original black and white one, which I was sort of messing around with this week. Um, but yeah, I was later to the game because the Game Boy Color is what I got first. Yeah. So I'll announce the first read since that was the one I put up. So Perplexity has been doing stuff. Like, think last week, I was talking to somebody. I was like, "Oh yeah, Cursor," because Cursor said they're doing computers. Like now, everyone does computers as sandboxes and runtimes. But then I realized Perplexity, I think, might have been first in the whole computer thing because their product is literally called Computer. Um, and have you tried it yet? I actually not even sure if it's like you can do it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there was a GitHub download video that, Christina Warren actually went down to show off the actual Macs, in the server room. I do remember when GitHub Actions first got on macOS, and, so it was, like, shortly after all the other ones, but, Linux and Windows. But yeah, basically, it was just, like, at the point, it was a trash can Macs, so if you remember, like, the cylinder ones, and it was just essentially a room for those on racks. And they weren't even like the racks, like the server racks. It was like the racks you sort of put your garage items on. Yeah, because that's like I guess I don't know. Like what is Apple doing at this point? Like they don't have blade servers and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, here we are, and, so, yeah, so I realized, like, we went on a bit of a rabbit hole because I asked you about computers, but, yeah, so, I don't know the guy who's tweeting this. He was just, like, about CTO to bold metrics. Anyway, it got announced on stage that, Perplexity is saying they don't use MCPs internally. Um, Recommendations, API, and CLIs, and this is internal, so, like, I think someone also pointed out that, like, Perplexity has a pretty popular MCP, and I've used it a couple times, like, I actually sort of fell off on using Perplexity, like, over the summer or maybe early fall, um, but not because like anything Flux City. I just got like distracted with other things that I was working with. Um, but I guess what the quote tweet was, and I think if I can I look at quote tweets? How do I do that? I have no idea how to find quote tweets on a post. Is that? Oh, there we go. Ah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the actually, this is what I saw first was Gary Tan's tweet, which is, yeah, um, there was a moment at when I was at Continue, and we asked a question, like, we're integrating MCP into the product, as everyone else was doing in their agent harnesses, and internally, the team was, like wasn't really using MCP at all, because most of the team was, like, probably still using ID at that moment because we were heavily invested in building the ID. But when asking the question, like, okay, well, what MCPs are people using? And I remember going to MCP night from Work OS. There was a second iteration of this, and there was like a lot of folks who were just like, there was like a Microsoft talk from the VS Code PM, which I say that Harold. A lot of people have seen him on stage and stuff like that, but he was talking about top 7 MCPs to leverage, and they're pretty much all the obvious, like Context 7, Supabase, a couple other ones that I can't remember at this point, but like some of the early MCPs out the market, like in the market that were useful and people leverage. But even now, like even Supabase for me, like I'm CLI now. Like there's not a lot of reason because it wraps the CLI. So like not a lot of reason to not use a CLI, especially if your agent could have a skill to basically say, hey, migrations are run this way. I have like super base functions that I run that are specific, like actually ship them. I shouldn't say this out loud, but I ship it with not signing them with the JWT because of like a weird setup that I sort of vibe coded. Um, but I just have like a skill that it says, hey, every time I deploy a super base function with the CLI, add this flag. And that was like stuff that you just figure out by this leveraging things. That you don't I guess when you have a skill, you don't need the MCP to, like, go find out what command line tool to use. And then MCPs become bloated, lots of token usage. Playwright's, like, insanely expensive when it comes to tokens. A couple other ones, Chrome MCP, same deal. Super basic, expensive MCP, but, like, if you just use the command line, you're not always trying to reads and writes and trying to figure out, like, what's happening inference-wise. It's a similar experience. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing that's interesting. I was experimenting, which I'll get the Pokemon thing last because I want to show the demo. But it's the idea of subagents is interesting because subagents you can like have something that's not ephemeral, that's not attached to your like main context window. Um, and I guess what I'm getting at, you're still being charged tokens, but you're not charged session like context. And like folks can like correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like they essentially you have this ephemeral agent or sub agent that runs that just reports back like with a hash of like, hey, work is done. And then commit is ready to go, or rather, they don't even commit. They just like job's done. Um, and like we're moving in a world like these like agent sandboxes. Like I just went for the Daytona event last week. Um, oh, was that last week? That was Monday. Uh, man, this week is it is flying by. Um, yeah, so I was there Monday. Great show. A lot of great conversations. I'd say like there are certain like uh Daytona obviously just announced a Series A. I think when they were doing this, they were like seed. Um, I like the conferences that have low effort, which is basically everything was a fireside chat. So like not a lot of presentation happening. I think Keynote had some presentations and stuff like that, but the fireside chats are actually pretty nice. It's like almost like a podcast. To be quite honest, I spent most of the time in the hallway hanging out with like Jeff Huntley and like a few other folks, like the Terso CEO, Glauber, and a few other folks. Just like a lot of the builders, a lot of folks that I've seen around who are now like working in AI space were there, and great networking event. I think they had like 1,000 plus people there, and the Chase Center. Like this is where the Warriors play, which is also like super weird to be having a conference in like where normally, yeah, yeah, yeah. I assumed that they would have like a conference center attached to it, but no, it was like right on the court. So they only took half. So obviously the stage is facing halfway. Like you only have access to half the arena. I guess not like intentionally because they only have 1,000 people. But essentially you just have like a couple sections that are facing half court. Um, and yeah, it was a good setup. Like I'd highly recommend watching a lot of the videos because I think especially the keynote. Daytona is now shipping computers as well, which we sort of like leaned into and talking about Perplexity. But yeah, hopefully we tried to Perplexity computer. I do hope I get some free time to explore other things that is not the day job, but or Pokemon. Um, but yeah, I actually totally like lost my train of thought. So let me just go to like the the next read anyway. Next read brought to you by Quad Code wiping your production database with Terraform. Um, yeah, this is like another one. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the Meta risk employee that that sounds weird, Meta risk. Um, but like the AI safety person who basically like deleted their emails. This is Quad Code wiping your production database with Terraform, and I think this is one of the situations where you could do the same thing with like a Superbase MCP. Like if you don't have the proper guardrails, you don't properly have like the I've seen this before experience. It can get pretty gnarly. So I'm curious, John, you ever wiped your database with Terraform as a human? Yeah, I can see his face or his avatar. Actually, not a bad statement, I guess, in this like current iteration because like there's a lot of I guess we're kind of like shooting from the hip with a lot of this like ancient harnesses stuff and like there's tooling like tools to basically keep things secure, but I think we're in a world where it's like the 0 to value is just so tempting that, like, if I can get Claude Code to run and have, like, 9 different Claude codes, I think I've definitely got myself into a world where I'm, like, typing the wrong command in the wrong window, thinking that I'm like, "This is a session that's, like, referring to this project," and then it goes down this rabbit hole of like, "Hey, I couldn't find that, but I rebuilt that stuff for you in this, like, wrong repo." And I'm like, "Oh, no. Let's call that back." no pun intended. But yeah, so like this is it feels like honestly I empathize because this is like probably a world that I get myself into because I know enough about Terraform. I've I've interacted with enough of it when people have set this up and have the guardrails up. Um, but that also puts me in a dangerous position of like, oh, let me just go ahead and like use Terraform for this like solution without ever reading the docs, without ever like being the owner of them, like maintaining a production system on Terraform. So then when I get to the point of like, hey, let's move on and like wipe state and move next to like go whatever. Um, like definitely it's a world where you could easily just by typing natural language do the wrong thing. And I've done this before where I'm like I've like missed the like when I say can't, I'll do like can by accident, just by like a typing error. But I'll hit enter, or like don't do this or do it. And so like when I'm responding back to Claude, then I'll be like, oh yeah, go for it, or go do it rather than or don't do it. Anyway, what I'm getting at is like it's easy to like type quickly because like you just assume typos like Claude can deal with them. Um, but if you're not, if your intent is missed because a typo or a grammar switch, yeah, I could totally see yourself like sort of failing pretty quickly and hopefully you have backups. Yeah, you know what the thing is like I see Nate, CTO of Continue, former coworker, Slop Apocalypse. He had generated a uh yeah, he's in the replies. He's up at the top. I'll drop it in the chat. Yeah, I do like that, that Twitter or X now puts replies of people you know up higher. Yeah, I see the, human layer guys up there too as well. Actually, a lot of people I know who jumped into this, Patrick, who's my former coworker, mentioned StackPack as a solution, which is basically your agent harness to, um, essentially interact with, like, Terraform and stuff like that. So it gives you just sort of like it gives you that filter. Actually, the one thing I did like about exe.dev is like it has a Shelly harness. And like I'm not an expert in Unix and shell commands. So all my experience in exe.dev is like, hey, Shelly, please help me unblock me in this situation. Or hey, I'm getting like these weird errors. Or I want to set up my local environment, which I should probably do at exe.dev is like figure out a way to like mirror some local environment because I have an open claw like, I don't want my entire ZSH RC like mirrored, but there's certain things that I do want like coming in by default. Um, so things like my Git login. Actually, not my Git login. Actually, I set up a set. I have a separate GitHub account for my OpenClaw. Uh, at GitHub, I had like 6 fake accounts to like test out GitHub things and do demos. So one of my side accounts I have attached to my OpenClaw, so I can like have super clarity of like OpenClaw did this, not me. And most of it is just like side projects that no one will ever see. Yeah, you know, it's funny. The terms and conditions say you can only have one per human. I don't know. Well, it used to. I don't know if it still says that, to be quite honest, because you know GitHub is on this track to 1 billion developers. So maybe maybe it's cool to have 3 or 4, and 3 or 4 of those are going to be open clause. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah, that interesting, yeah. So I saw we have 1.1 0.1.1 in tape, so are we now already doing automated releases? Yeah. 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 Yeah, good times. So you have, 2 reads. Before I jumped into my demo, did you wanna talk to those? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's like so when I got into this industry, like, about 11, 12 years ago, like, coding was my hobby that turned into my full-time job, and, I don't know if you had a similar experience when you sort of switched over from nursing, but my entire identity was kind of built around like, hey, I'm an engineer. I write code, and like part of my struggle. So not speaking like losing your job's very different than like changing your job from like engineering to DevRel, which was what I'm about to mention. But like a lot of my friction of like going to DevRel was like I don't want to do it. I'm here to like learn how to code. I want to like get deeper and like craft the skill. And like my peers are accelerating to this level and I'm going to switch over to like go speak at conferences. I'm like, ah, no, thank you. So actually, I was very like anti DevRel. My like when I first started DevRel, even before GitHub, when I was at Netlify, and because my identity was locked into like, hey, I'm an engineer. I write code. I've learned like good best practices. It's definitely shifted where I'm like, cool. I've like kind of leaned into okay, I can talk about stuff and I can tell stories, and then not as deeply technical as I would like to be, but I'm technical enough. Um, but like to lose your role, but also like have friction in trying to re-enter the market. Yeah, I also feel for that as well because I know teams like obviously Square had like a huge cut last week, and like a lot of the folks, yeah, a lot of the folks I know were involved in that too as well. So it's like great that you get some pretty good severance. So that's actually super nice that they were able to extend that. But like being part of a layoff at a time that like you're now seeing Amazon also, which I didn't pull up as part. I wanted to actually make one of the reads, but like Amazon. Actually, how much do you know about this? Because you worked at Amazon. Because like they're laying off staff. I think that's been confirmed. It was rumored earlier in the week, but it's confirmed. But now they're training. Like on your way out, you have to train, or the folks left have to train the AI to basically like fill in the gaps. Yeah, I think Twitch. Oh no, no, Coinbase. Coinbase. Twitch. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, but yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and like, man, I've not been in a culture where run books like kind of ruled the world, at least ruled the engineering. Um, I would have loved that at GitHub because there's a lot of stuff that I had to like go beg and borrow and steal to figure out how to do things. I imagine GitHub does have something like that, but I wasn't exposed to it, being in DevRel. But um, yeah, interesting times. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, wow, and also I realized as you explained this, GitHub did have run books, we had them in a scripts folder, local in the sort of monolith, so, uh, before I get a bunch of hubbers, tweeting me or DMing me, letting me know this, but yeah. Uh, cool, you have another, read. GeoHot, yeah, George Hotz. I've actually not met George Hotz. I've been in Twitter Spaces with him back in the day, and I've also followed his career. Like, ironically, 'cause, like, if folks don't know, George Hott was like the first to jailbreak the iPhone. Or no, jailbreak. He wasn't the first for the iPhone. He was the first for the PlayStation 2 jailbreak, and that was a uh, it was a big. He did jailbreak the iPhone, but like it was a big like legal thing. Um, Actually, I don't know what the repercussion of that was, but anyway, look it up. So yeah, kind of like when he pops up, I'm like, oh, GeoHot's back. He also had like a rap career on YouTube as well, which was like it was like very serious, like put up a bunch of raps on YouTube. But yeah, it's just like kid back in the YouTube era, like we were all in high school at one time, and yeah, funny enough, like he has a lot of overlap with, Timothy Chalamet of like, Timothy Chalamet, yeah, so, Timothy Chal like, they're not overlapping, like, know each other, but, Timothy Chalamet also is, like, a jailbreaker and a rapper on YouTube. Anyway, um, small world, but yeah, no, that's just actually interesting, and, like, the thing he's working on, he's doing, uh, what is it? Comma? Yeah, he's doing the tiny grad stuff. So like all the IT, but like I think his company's like self-driving, essentially jailbreaking cars as self-drive. But like that's not how it's like sold. Um, but yeah, I forgot what his company called. It's like self-driving, comma. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny because my demo is basically that. Perfect segue, which is yeah. So folks, we didn't actually intro us like Open Source Ready Live. We have a podcast. Please like and subscribe to the Open Source Ready Substack, which all the show. This is like we should do ads. This is brought to you by the podcast Open Source Ready. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this actually today came out. Yeah, Nginx. We talked to James Strong and Marco Ebert about sunsetting open source. So great sort of like sobering conversation about how that sort of played out and like where the world is for them now. So yeah, if you want to talk about open source and sunsetting projects, great conversation. And then we also talked to Glauber about rewriting SQLite and Rust. So they're actually having a moment. I realized their cloud platform is still not even updated to use the Rust version. So they're still using the old version of Terso. I think I was talking to Glauber this week at the Daytona event. So in progress on the roadmap. Um, but my actual demo, and I won't demo it live because it's like not as exciting to demo live. But I essentially ran Pokemon. So I had this like idea. So like on, I'll mention this as well. But we haven't announced the company that we're basically co-founding, but I'll mention the blog post because we have actually. I don't know if we actually used a read. Any reads have been our blog post, but for folks who are watching at this point, at this far, you probably already know this exists. But I ran Pokemon headless inside a Pi Game Boy, um, which is like a headless way to run emulation. So I legally obtained. Actually, I just downloaded a ROM for Pokemon Red. Yeah, I did purchase it at one point, so, and I'm pretty sure it got lost, in some move or whatever, but what I'm getting at is, I ran Pokemon, in a Stereos VM, so Stereos is this thing we open sourced last week, um, anyway, actually, was that last week? That was the week before, yeah, yeah, so, yeah, star of the repo, 415 stars today, So I created a VM. Basically, I just wanted to test the technology, and I was looking for like reasons to spin up VMs and agents. And so what I ended up doing is just spinning up Pokemon. And the goal was if I could speed run Pokemon. So I'll open up the GitHub repo as well, which is Paper Compute Pokemon. So the repo is like under the Paper Compute Co. Oh yeah, let me share it. Yeah, so that way I'm Oh yeah. Yeah. You know what? I realize I could just hold on. I could stop sharing on this side, and then I have to share audio. I totally did that. We've been yeah, good times. And then I will turn up the audio here, and then you should be able to pass it on.
Yes. Hello. I think this is the week we're gonna buy Streamlabs or whatever that platform. We're just gonna do it. We need to like.
Yeah, we probably should just have a consistent place that we can stream, and
Yeah,
like we're currently on like two separate platforms streaming, and like we should just like restream from the same place.
Yeah.
But like this is not our business, so like yeah, the podcast is.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, what was I getting at? Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Do you see it? Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So I'm sharing my screen to you and like showing off the Pokemon. So basically, I sped run essentially to spinning up VM, having agent run. The harness itself is Claude Code because I was like, let's just keep it simple. So Claude Code is basically taking commands to essentially navigate through the map. And these are
Mhm.
actual live screenshots from the experience. So the way it works is I have it in my git ignore, but I essentially am just taking screenshots every 10 turns and
Yeah.
just going into the frames um, folder. And it's funny enough, a year ago, I built this essentially for Instagram video, where I would take every 5 frames, I would just take a screenshot as well to like generate recipe videos. So like, kind of just using all the knowledge I've had and messing with AI and like as like fun side
Right.
projects. But I guess the things I'll point out in this, and I sort of point out in this blog post, which is my actual read is what I learned running 10 Pokemon bots in 36 seconds is that one, it's super hard to do it the way that Claude plays Pokemon is the Twitch channel that essentially just like runs through basically plays Pokemon using prompts in
Yeah.
chat and currently running through it using 4.6. Definitely a good watch, but it's pretty slow to watch. I wanted to speed it up by doing it headless, so I could actually go from 0 to pick up your Pokemon at Professor Oak's lab in like 3 seconds.
Hmm.
So, and that was like through a bunch of trial and error. So,
Yeah.
I manually did trial and error through I called the Pokedex logs. Um, and if you know the Pokedex, this is like where you get all your information about Pokemon and about everything basically about Pokemon. And the way it worked is like one, I just created a log. I called it Pokedex later, but I created a log because I needed to set up the VM, the TOML. I wanted to be able to give the agent understanding inside the skills folder, which then gets called inside of your Claude code. Um, to basically just know how to this up. So I wanted to be able to spin this up multiple times, spin it down without like trying to figure out like what's the incantations, like what are the commands. So like that was my first log, so not as exciting. But the second log was like basically log 2 got past the intro, which I didn't. It basically just like identified like all the attempts, and I
Right.
eventually was like 10 turns, 50 turns, 1,000 turns,
Right.
and could not get outside the room. And what I found out is like when you go through a door, or so you get out your room, but you can't get out the house because there's a 8 second cooldown for every door. Which turns out that's how the game works. Like you have a cooldown when you go through a door, so you don't go back through the door accidentally.
Right.
So it was like this discovering all this like gameplay mechanisms, like how games work, is basically the first like 3 logs. So the way it worked, I first 2 logs was Claude, second 2 logs was Codex, because I was like, okay, maybe I could figure it out. And Codex
Mhm.
did figure it
Yeah.
out how to eventually get outside the house. But then when I ended up finding out, I won't go through all these logs. You can read these logs yourself. Um, as you run this, it will actually dump logs for you. But I made sure the first 6 were not in the git ignore, so people can kind of get like a first taste of what
Oh,
happened.
sure. Get out of the house at least.
Yeah, and then so the way it works is I got out the house, but then it started wandering around the map by log 6, and it's because I didn't talk to anybody. So I'm like, okay, part of the mechanism is you have to talk to people to get context clues to know what to do next. Because you'll be
Mm,
in a random map and you'll have to discover like where the hidden things are and how to find specific Pokemon to do side quests. So then I start keeping those are part of the log. So this is a human readable log. I also I forgot what I called it in the get ignore, but I have an agent readable log, which is basically just dumping in telemetry. Which actually I don't know what it's called. Oh, notes. So notes MD is a basically per run notes that are ephemeral, and then notes MD basically like between those two logs will get sent to tapes. So I have all the tape sessions, and then what I figured out is I can just write. I have like the side writer basically, and it's actually not in this repo. Because I figured all this stuff
right.
out, and then I started thinking about okay, this is a lot of data. So I created this new repo called Pokemon Kafka, which I haven't blogged about yet. I'll do a tweet after this on it, and then I'm gonna do a Hacker Noon article about it as well. But then I was like, cool. Now we can spin up like 1,000 agents to like speed run and find out the best pathway.
Mm,
And this is based on the Alpha Evolve. Man, I was like spamming our Slack channel on all this stuff because I'm like, I'm like figuring out how to do like proper deep mind level white paper. But this paper came out. I thought it actually came out last month. It came out last summer. Oh no, almost a year ago. Yeah.
about a year ago
Um,
now. Yeah.
but this is basically that pattern, which you spin up 1,000 agents, you find the best 4 runs, and then you fork off those. And you spin up 1,000. So frankly, I didn't actually set that up. I'm going to set it up next to actually do this sort of massive learning. But what I'm doing is like a very lower, lightweight version of this, and
Right.
that's what I'm doing in the Kafka version. So if you go to the README, and actually I do call this out in the other repo that the next steps are all basically in this repo because I wanted to keep the first repo clean, so I have a fork of that repo. But I think I do have like a explanation of the Kafka yeah, agents proxy goes to the tapes proxy and then goes to the Kafka stream. And then the stream itself, it has a telemetry consumer, which basically it from Kafka, it writes similar, it actually uses the same framework of tapes. It writes the tapes as well. And I created like a little side writer Kafka can write back. Actually, not Kafka. Flink can write to tapes. But anyway, it kind of gets very messy at this point. But I was like,
Right.
hey, can I just like figure out self healing? And that's what this is. Flink will find out anomaly detection, which is basically you got stuck at the door, or when I found that after you get a Pokemon, you have to talk to the professor. Sorry, after the professor, you get in the to pick a Pokemon, you have to talk to the professor, and then he'll give you some introductions, and you have to like walk around him, which is also like super clunky for agents because it could not figure this part out.
Yeah.
And I failed
Go pick a
miserably.
Pokemon, right?
Yeah, and then the other thing that changes is like at this point in the game, if you smash A through um, every word blob, like you just move on. Like you collect the data, you keep moving forward. But at this point, when you pick a Pokemon, you have to say yes or no. And that was like the thing that
Mm,
actually was missing because it would actually, I think, default to no. Or it was there was just like all this nuance that I had to figure out, and without playing the game and viewing it, and then without having the agent understand what it's looking at,
right.
which I'll get to. I did have a sort of like high, medium, low experience, where low is like heuristics, like true, false, move left, up, red, down.
Right.
Medium is introducing the LLM to reason based on what it's looking at. So that's why I started using Claude tokens. Um, and then because I ended up using Claude, I tried Codex and I just went straight Claude to like figure it out. Um,
Yeah.
and then I went. So here's the chart. Basically, it's like the speed run. So I've only got to Viridian City so far,
Okay.
and um, if I do high, it's basically all LLM powered, which is like reasoning collectively,
Mm,
like getting stuff. And I think the one thing I'll introduce as well is you had dropped a link about factorial learning environments
yes.
based on this game. So man, sorry, this still feels like a dissertation. Um, but
I love it.
what I ended up doing is like basically the FLE will if you take 2 steps forward and you work, but you get blocked, it will take like 3 steps back and then reevaluate where to go next.
Yeah.
So like that's the high level of the paper. It's linked in the README. That's actually how I run the speed run. I do FLE first, and then I do Alpha Evolve. So
Yeah.
like first you're just like doing some like, oh cool, let's just like you're wandering through the dark and you're figuring it out. And then once you figured it out, it gets written to JSON inside of my
Right.
Pokédex. So that I can like map the route of how you can speed run. So that way
Hmm.
the next time you run, you don't go through the mess of trying to figure out where the door is. You already know where it's at.
Yeah.
And that's how you sort of Alpha Evolve the next step.
Yeah. One of the things that was really interesting at the time about the factorial learning environment was it was one of the first things that kind of showed large language models could operate efficiently and effectively in like space. Granted, Factorio is two-dimensional space, but it's very important to like be able to move resources around and having like the grabber arms doing stuff, because it's like, oh, some arms can only reach two spaces over, and as a conveyor belt comes around the thing, it can go and grab a thing off of that. And I love Factorio. It's a great game. You got to play it. But I imagine it's similar because your guy on Pokemon is moving around 3D. Well, it's not 3D, but moving around space, this two-dimensional grid space. So yeah, it's kind of similar-ish. I was wondering. I'm gonna send this in the chat real quick, but there's I remember reading about this thing. I think it's like a year old or so. That's a few years old now, but it's basically like something somebody trained for battles specifically. So I wonder if you could almost have like it kind of be a mixture of experts kind of thing, where there's the battle expert and there's the like moving around and talking to people expert, and there's the like I don't know, teleporting around the map expert or something who knows how to use like fly and and dig and all that stuff. Um,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
it
that's the thing that
yeah.
I ended up introducing later is like once you get a Pokemon, you have to battle at that point,
Mm,
and then I built a whole battle memory. So yeah, this was
ah,
really fascinating because like the whole like self healing operation and loop and stuff like that, like this is where I was now I'm thinking like, okay, how can I go fix lint fixes? Like lint errors inside
yeah,
of my project or like refactor 5,000 line files. That's what I want to go tackle next weekend.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say. I mean, there's some people that we know at this company, Mechanical Orchard, who are kind of tackling this similar problem, where basically like there's these huge enterprises with uh ginormous COBOL monoliths sitting around that they are having a very hard time modernizing. So what you can do is, if you have like some specifications that are basically like full understanding and code paths of like what this thing should do, kind of a black box in and out, what you get, you can use that as basically the like iteration loop for AI, just to continuously refactor and build out, the like new features that essentially one to one, as long as you've mapped out all the capabilities, kind of bugs and everything included, then it can basically hit that target. Um, I was talking to them the other day because it's interesting, because like that is so valuable, having kind of the mapping of like what are the capabilities and all this stuff. And similar, like in the game, like the mapping really is like beating the Elite Four, or having like a team. Like losing a battle is kind of like oh, you failed a test, you have to go back and like reiterate.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you can, like, when you find a Pokemon's weakness and you sort of log that in the Pokédex, like, the next time around, you're like, ah, this is easy. Like, I'll just use this
Right.
Pokemon before I even, like, set up my Pokemon in a way that, like, I'm gonna, like, scale through this. So I'd love to get to that point where I can, because I get to Viridian City, which is the first map after getting a Pokemon, but
Right.
I haven't done the gym battle. So, like, what I want to do is, like, figure out, like, how to set myself up for succeeding quickly. So it's like probably go like I'm already speed running, so I can go speed run, like go get a bunch of like level up my starter Pokemon to basically like defeat the first gym battle person, or I guess Misty. Man, this is
Yeah.
deep in the lore, but like I
And
was a very much a Pokemon kid.
Brock, and then Misty, and then
Yeah,
I forget.
yeah. Honestly, it's a pretty short game too, as well. Actually, there's the milestones. It's basically yeah, it's got the Pewter City, which is the rock. Brock is like what do it's just call that right here. Oh, that's right. You don't actually battle Misty until later because she does. You don't find her at the
Yeah.
gym. You find her earlier in the game. Man, this is wild.
Well, 8 badges after that as well.
Yeah,
There's a lot of game in there in those additional badges, right?
yeah. So like, I'd love to get to the point where I could speed run this, but like I definitely got to do some real work.
Yeah.
I did like essentially I did a case study of 10,000 turns, so I did add that to the uh, kind of identify the self healing loop, and this is basically this. So like cold start, no, it's like 1 of 10, no improvements, no historical injuries, and then when I go to like 2, I can get 3 generations of improvements. It was interesting at 3, then I had no, it was basically static. Like it actually the
Right.
score. This is a fitness score, basically based on the Alpha Evolve on how well the runs were. Um, but then you get back to like, okay, you get essentially back to improvements for level 4, and that says, sorry, the entry that I guess I was calling them their sessions within the turns, but then I call them epics within the code, and like these are 1, 2, 3, 4 epics of like these
Sure.
runs, but each one is learning on the previous epics.
Hmm.
So if I ran this like maybe 100 more times, like I probably would have like the value of like again the run book is what I'm building essentially, and it's like a full circle of our conversation. I'm just building a run book to essentially speed run Pokemon. So if
Yeah,
anybody needs to go fix or go, you know, beat Misty or Brock or whatever, like you've got that pathway for it.
you got it. Yeah. Wow. That is very cool, man.
Yeah, it's
I love
yeah,
it.
super nerdy stuff. Like heads in the clouds on trying to figure out the stuff, but like happy I got to this on Tuesday, and then I basically had to bow out and move on to
Yeah.
to the next
Yeah.
thing.
That's fair. That's very fair. This is good stuff. I mean, this is not too far from how you would basically train a model off raw data, you know,
Yeah.
iterating and going back and forth and stuff. That's good.
Yeah, and it's like I'm super excited to have like a real life use case for this. Again, Pokemon not being the real life use case. The next thing I work on being the use case. But yeah, super excited to talk about like in the future stuff that we've been working on. But we're about at time, so like we can wind
Yeah.
down. Um
Wind it down.
yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So listeners, stay ready.